Linda McMahon has started the process of stripping the Department of Education for parts. It's clear that she has absolutely no knowledge of education, but is just serving as a rubber stamp for Trump's agenda.
You think we should be recruiting the head of education from the WWE?
Yeah. You know, it was not the first place I was thinking of where you get a good Secretary of Education. But actually, it's a fair question you asked, Joe. How insulting is it to every public school teacher? How insulting is it to every parent who has worked through the public school, to every volunteer, to every librarian, to everybody who helps make that system work and has devoted their lives to it, to say, no, we're going to bring in someone who's all about showmanship, but not about substance. Our kids need someone who believes in public education. No nation builds a strong future by shortchanging public education.
The Democrats kept the government shut down for 43 days. Flights were delayed, SNAP benefits ran dry, small business and housing loans were frozen, but one major component of life for American families went virtually unaffected: education. The Federal Department of Education furloughed 90% of its staff. And what happened? Nothing. Schools stayed open. Students went to class. Teachers got paid. The shutdown proved our schools don't depend on Washington bureaucracy to function. If 90% of an agency supposedly governing education can disappear for weeks without disrupting education, do we really need it at all? And the announcement really follows the plan that President Trump has had since day one, and that is returning education to the states. He fully believes, as do I, the best education is that's closest to the child and not run from a bureaucracy in Washington, D.C. So the announcement that we made this afternoon was what we are doing to take certain programs that are now part of the Department of Education and what we call signing interagency agreements, and that is that we procure the services of other agencies. It's kind of a bit of a test run. Mm-hmm. We want to move on a temporary basis some of those programs to different agencies. The funding still comes from the Department of Education. The management of those programs, the oversight of those programs is still at the department, but we want to see if what we think to be true is that they will function much more in a streamlined fashion and much more efficiently if we relocate those programs into other agencies. And so if we do that, I call it the proof of concept. Mm-hmm. Well, we'll move it, we'll see how it works, we will deliver then to Congress the outcomes, and we then hope that Congress will then vote to codify the permanent move of those independent programs to those agencies, and eventually that will be all the programs that the Department of Education has oversight over, and then we'll be ready to get rid of that bureaucracy and fully return things to the states where I do believe it belongs.
Before I begin, I would like to address a question that the chair of the full committee asked and none of you had an answer for, just to give it a little context. He asked, how did the federal government shutdown affect school districts, and then followed up by saying it didn't. That is absolutely not true. School districts do not operate budgets on a week-to-week basis. So much of the Title I funds and the IDEA funds that support our special education students had already been dispersed over the summer. So schools were already operating with that. Many school districts, especially Title I districts that rely heavily on federal funding, saw delays in reimbursements for meal programs for their students with free and reduced lunches, and they had to direct funds from other places. We saw around the country Head Start programs that experienced closures or temporarily reduced services. Again, Title I districts saw a halting of federal grant-making opportunities and technical assistance to support them with those grants as they plan for the next year. I can tell you that my friends at the Department of Defense Education Activities, which is DODEA, our military schools, worked for several weeks without being paid, and many of their extracurricular activities were halted. They still showed up, so the students didn't feel the impact. But if you ask them if there was any direct effect from the federal government, I'm sure that their answer would be different. And I think the thing that is most important and incredibly egregious is a constituent of mine who has a complaint with the Office of Civil Rights for a transition program for her severely disabled son who will be graduating soon. And she needs to make sure that his supports are in place as he transitions. And she lost weeks of getting an answer, or at least a meeting or a decision, so that her son can transition out of high school. So for our most impacted students in our most vulnerable school districts, if you ask them if there is any impact for those teachers working in those communities and those administrators trying to plan for the next year, they absolutely felt the effect of the last several weeks.
As Trump tries to abolish the Department of Education, he's also proposing to cut funding for K-12 public schools and to force universities to give him influence over student admissions, faculty hiring, and what's taught. As a professor, I know firsthand how education empowers young people's minds. We can't have a functioning democracy if people cannot deliberate critically about it. That's why authoritarians replace education with indoctrination.
Children will be taught to love America. Children will be taught to be patriots.
Instead of teaching students to think for themselves, authoritarians seek to instill blind allegiance and to suppress dissent.
Just like Linda McMahon, the agencies that have been given control of the Department of Education contracts have little to no experience in the actual field of education, making it likely that services will be impacted and ultimately it's the kids that are gonna suffer. For Trump, the worse programs run, the more leverage he'll have to just scrap them entirely. Linda McMahon is the mouthpiece, but the entire Republican Party seems eager to hand control of education, like just about everything else, over to the states, and then good luck to ya. But they're not so keen when it comes to Democratic-led states having that sort of control. It'll be interesting to see what happens if Republicans fully relinquish federal power and states start to exert their influence in ways that Trump ultimately won't be able to control. If you enjoyed that, make sure that you never miss another video by subscribing. And if you want a little more, consider hitting the join button and becoming an actual member. But you're probably wondering, why the hell would I do that, John? First off, calm down. The stakes in this are very, very low. But also, when you click the join button and you become a member, you get access to bonus content that I make every week, and it's a ton of fun. You get access to tons of custom emojis and more besides that. By the way, if you join at Tier 3, you even get access to a monthly member hangout with myself and other awesome people, and we always have a great time. By the way, you'll get all that going forward, but you also unlock years of the back catalog. That is literally 100 or more bonus clips, top 10 lists, debates, and more. What are you waiting for? Click the join button below. Your support powers our show, and we couldn't do it without you. Or at the very least, I wouldn't really want to try. Viewers like you keep me here. So thank you in advance for joining.